The day my younger brother, Adam, arrived at our doorstep with his suitcase in hand, I thought it was a blessing. We hadn't spent much time together in recent years, and having him around before my wedding felt like a perfect chance to reconnect. Emily, my fiancée, welcomed him warmly, her smile bright as she helped carry his things inside. "You'll stay in the guest room," she said, gesturing toward the end of the hallway. "Make yourself at home." Adam flashed his usual carefree grin, the one that always seemed to charm everyone around him. "Thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. And congrats, by the way. You're marrying one lucky guy." His compliment made Emily blush, and I chuckled, brushing it off. Adam had always been smooth with his words, but I didn't think much of it. He was my brother, after all. At first, it was great having him around. He joined us for dinners, shared stories about his travels, and even helped me with some last-minute wedding tasks. But as the days went on, I started to notice something different. It wasn't one specific moment that tipped me off, but a series of small things that, together, painted a picture I didn't like. The way Emily and Adam laughed together over private jokes I didn't understand. The way she'd lean in to listen when he spoke, her eyes bright with interest. The way his gaze lingered on her just a little too long when he thought no one was watching. I told myself I was being paranoid. Adam was my brother, and Emily was the woman I loved. There was nothing to worry about. But the nagging feeling in the back of my mind refused to go away. One night, I came home late from a meeting with the wedding planner. The house was quiet, and I assumed everyone had gone to bed. But as I walked down the hallway toward our bedroom, I heard voices coming from the living room. Curious, I paused, staying out of sight. Emily and Adam were sitting on the couch, talking softly. She was laughing, her head tilted back as she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Adam was leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees, a faint smile on his lips. "It's just been so nice having you here," Emily was saying. "It's like, I don't know, you've brought a little extra life into the house." Adam chuckled, his voice low. "I'm glad. I was worried I might be intruding." "Not at all," she said quickly. "You've been a good distraction." "Distraction? From what?" I wanted to step into the room to ask what they were talking about, but something held me back. Instead, I slipped away, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. After that night, I started to see things differently. Emily seemed more distant, more distracted, as if her mind was somewhere else. She'd spend hours chatting with Adam in the kitchen or out in the garden, their laughter carrying through the house like a song I wasn't meant to hear. I tried to bring it up casually, asking if everything was okay, but she brushed me off with a quick smile and a wave of her hand. "I'm just stressed about the wedding," she said. "There's so much to do." It made sense, I supposed. Weddings were stressful, but it didn't explain why she seemed so much more relaxed around Adam, or why their connection felt different. One evening, while Emily was out running errands, I noticed Adam's phone on the kitchen counter. It was unlocked, the screen lit up with a notification. I knew I shouldn't look. It wasn't like me to invade someone's privacy, especially my brother's. But something about the situation felt off, and I couldn't stop myself. The message was from Emily. "Thanks for earlier," it read. "I really needed that." My heart sank as I stared at the screen, my mind racing with possibilities. What could she have meant? Thanks for what? And why was she messaging Adam about it? I quickly put the phone down as I heard the sound of the front door opening. Emily walked in, smiling as she set her bags on the counter. "Hey," she said. "What's for dinner?" I forced a smile, trying to act normal, but my thoughts were a whirlwind of doubt and suspicion. I needed answers, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear the truth. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Emily's message to Adam replayed in my mind on a loop, each word digging deeper into my thoughts. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that I was overreacting, but the doubt was impossible to ignore. That night, as I lay in bed next to Emily, I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, as though she didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, my mind was a storm of questions. What had she meant by "thanks for earlier"? Was it just an innocent message, or was there something more? And if there was, how far had it gone? The next morning, I decided to keep a closer eye on them. If there was something going on, I needed to know for sure. At breakfast, Emily was in the kitchen making coffee while Adam sat at the table, scrolling through his phone. I joined them, trying to act casual, but the tension in the room was palpable. "So, what are your plans for today?" I asked, glancing between them. Emily shrugged. "I was thinking of running a few errands. Maybe Adam can come with me? He mentioned wanting to check out that bookstore downtown." Adam looked up, his expression neutral. "Yeah, if that's cool with you." "Of course," I said quickly, though the words tasted bitter in my mouth. Emily smiled, her eyes flicking to Adam for just a moment too long. It was a small thing, something most people wouldn't have noticed, but to me it felt like a confirmation of everything I feared. Later that day, as they left the house together, I found myself pacing in the living room, my thoughts racing. I knew I couldn't keep ignoring the signs, but confronting them felt like stepping off a cliff with no idea what waited below. Instead of waiting, I grabbed my keys and followed them. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie, but I needed to know. I kept a safe distance as they drove into town, parking a block away when they stopped at the bookstore. From where I sat in my car, I watched as they walked inside, laughing and talking like they didn't have a care in the world. It felt like a punch to the gut, seeing them so comfortable together, so connected. When they returned home later that evening, I tried to act normal, but every word felt forced, every smile hollow. Emily didn't seem to notice, chatting away about the books she'd bought, but Adam was quieter than usual, his gaze avoiding mine. After dinner, Emily went upstairs to shower, leaving Adam and me alone in the living room. The silence between us was heavy, awkward, like we were both waiting for the other to speak. Finally, I broke the silence. "So, you and Emily seem to be getting along pretty well." Adam glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "Yes, she's great. You're lucky to have her." His words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I am." As he went upstairs, I stayed behind, staring at the empty room. My heart was pounding, my mind racing with possibilities. I couldn't keep doing this, pretending everything was fine while the doubts ate away at me. I needed proof. Real proof. Later that night, when the house was quiet, I slipped into the guest room where Adam was staying. His suitcase was open on the floor, clothes spilling out in a haphazard mess. I hesitated, guilt twisting in my stomach, but the need for answers was stronger. In the side pocket of his bag, I found a small notebook, the cover worn and faded. I flipped it open, my hands trembling as I scanned the pages. Most of it was mundane, notes about his travels, reminders to call certain people. But then I found a page that made my blood run cold. I can't stop thinking about her. She's beautiful, kind, and everything I never knew I wanted. But she's not mine. She's his. And every time I see them together, it kills me. The words blurred before my eyes as the weight of their meaning settled over me. He wasn't talking about anyone else. He was talking about Emily. The next morning, I couldn't look at Adam the same way. Every word he said, every smile he gave felt like a betrayal. But what I couldn't understand was Emily's role in all of this. Did she know? Did she feel the same way? Or was Adam carrying these feelings alone? I wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was hope. The hope that I was wrong, that there was some other explanation. Instead, I turned my attention to Emily, watching her more closely than ever. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way her eyes lit up when Adam was around. It all felt wrong, like a puzzle I couldn't piece together. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The pieces were all there, the stolen glances, the lingering touches, the message on Adam's phone, and now his own written words. My brother had feelings for Emily, and the way she acted around him, I couldn't tell if she was oblivious, caught up in the moment, or if she felt the same. Every interaction between them felt like a dagger, and I started to resent Adam for ever stepping into our lives. What had once been a happy, peaceful home now felt heavy, suffocating. The wedding was only 2 weeks away, but instead of excitement, all I felt was dread. It was a Saturday afternoon, warm and sunny, and Emily was out in the garden planting flowers. I watched from the kitchen window as Adam joined her, kneeling beside her in the dirt. They were talking, their voices too low for me to hear, but the way they laughed together made my stomach twist. At one point, Emily leaned over to brush dirt off Adam's arm, her hand lingering longer than it should have. He looked at her, his expression soft, almost tender. I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest, and before I could stop myself, I stormed outside. "What's going on here?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. They both looked up, startled. Emily quickly pulled her hand back, her cheeks flushing. "Nothing," she said, standing up and brushing dirt off her hands. "We were just planting these together." Adam stayed where he was, his gaze fixed on the ground. I forced a smile, though my hands were clenched into fists. "Looks cozy." Emily gave me a confused look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, my voice tight. "Just don't forget we have a wedding to plan." With that, I turned and walked back inside, leaving them standing in awkward silence. But the damage was done. The look on Adam's face, the way Emily had blushed, they confirmed everything I'd been afraid of. That night, I tried to talk to Emily, to bring up what had happened in the garden. But every time I started, she deflected, brushing off my concerns with a forced smile and a quick kiss. "You're just stressed," she said, her voice soothing. "It's normal before a wedding." "Stressed?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Emily, you've been spending more time with Adam than you have with me." She frowned, her arms crossing over her chest. "He's your brother. I thought you'd be happy we're getting along." "There's a difference between getting along and whatever this is," I snapped, unable to hold back my frustration any longer. Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're accusing me of, but maybe you should take a step back and think about how ridiculous you sound." Her words hit me like a slap, and I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere with her. Not tonight. The next day, I cornered Adam in the living room. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, when I walked in and sat down across from him. "We need to talk," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. He looked up, his expression guarded. "About what?" "About Emily," I said, my voice steady but cold. "About the way you look at her. About the way she acts around you." Adam's face paled, and he quickly looked away. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," I said sharply. "I read your journal, Adam. I know how you feel about her." His head snapped up, his eyes wide with a mix of anger and panic. "You went through my stuff?" "I had to," I shot back, "because I knew something was wrong, and you weren't going to tell me." He stood up, his fists clenched at his sides. "You had no right." "Maybe not," I said, standing to face him. "But you had no right to come into my house and make a move on my fiancée." His face flushed with anger, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said quietly. "I didn't plan this." "Then what the hell is it?" I demanded. "Are you in love with her?" Adam hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "Maybe I am, but I never acted on it. I swear." His words did little to calm the storm raging inside me. "You need to leave," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Today." Adam's eyes widened. "You're kicking me out?" "You've done enough damage," I said. "I can't have you here, not with the wedding so close." He opened his mouth to protest, but then he nodded, his expression resigned. "Fine, I'll go." When I told Emily what had happened, she was furious. "You kicked him out?" she exclaimed, her voice rising. "Without even talking to me first?" "I didn't think I needed to," I said, my anger flaring again. "He admitted it, Emily. He admitted he has feelings for you." Her face softened, and she sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I demanded. "Because right now it feels like I'm losing my brother and my fiancé all at once." She looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "I didn't want this to happen." "But it did," I said, my voice breaking. "So, what are we going to do about it?" She didn't answer, and the silence between us spoke volumes. The morning of the wedding was nothing like I'd imagined it would be. There was no excitement, no joy, just a heavy sense of dread that clung to me like a shadow. Adam had left the house days ago, but his presence still lingered, like a ghost haunting every corner. And Emily had grown quieter, more distant. Every smile she gave felt forced, every word carefully chosen. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, I tried to shake the feeling that something was about to go horribly wrong. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but all I felt was doubt. The ceremony was set to take place in the garden behind our house. Guests were already starting to arrive, their laughter and chatter carrying through the open windows. I watched them from my bedroom, trying to focus on the reality of the moment instead of the storm brewing in my mind. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Come in," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. The door opened, and to my surprise, it was Adam. He looked nervous, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "I needed to talk to you," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "I thought I made myself clear," I said, turning back to the mirror. "You weren't supposed to come." "I know," he said, his voice quiet. "But I couldn't stay away. Not without saying something." I turned to face him, my patience wearing thin. "What could you possibly have left to say, Adam? You've already said enough." He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I snapped. "Sorry doesn't undo what you've done." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "But you deserve the truth. All of it." My heart pounded as I waited for him to continue, the silence between us stretching unbearably. When he finally spoke, his words hit me like a freight train. "Emily feels the same way," he said, his voice barely audible. "She didn't want to hurt you, but she loves me." I stared at him, the room spinning around me. "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "She told me," he said, his eyes pleading. "She's been trying to figure out what to do, but she couldn't go through with the wedding without telling you the truth." My mind raced, 1,000 thoughts crashing into each other. This couldn't be real. Emily would never do this. She loved me. She chose me. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Please just talk to her," he begged. "She's waiting for you in the garden. Get out." I roared, my anger exploding as I pointed to the door. Adam flinched but didn't argue. He turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood there for a moment, my chest heaving, before I forced myself to move. I found Emily in the garden, standing beneath the archway decorated with flowers. She looked beautiful, radiant even, but the moment she saw me, her expression crumbled. "Is it true?" I demanded, my voice rough with emotion. "Did you tell Adam you love him?" She didn't answer right away, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I didn't plan this." "That's not an answer," I said, stepping closer. "Do you love him, Emily? Yes or no?" Tears filled her eyes as she looked at me, her silence louder than any words could have been. My heart broke as I realized the truth. She did love him. She hadn't denied it. All this time, I'd been fighting to hold on to something that was already gone. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice hollow. She looked away, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't know." "You don't know?" I repeated, my anger flaring again. "We're supposed to be getting married today, Emily. This isn't something you just figure out." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I could go through with it, but I can't." Her words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make her explain how she could do this to me. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there beneath the archway. The wedding was canceled. Guests were sent home with awkward apologies, their questions left unanswered. I stayed in the house for a few days, unable to face the world, unable to process what had happened. Adam and Emily disappeared together. I don't know where they went, and honestly, I didn't care. All I knew was that the two people I'd trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Looking back, I don't know if there was anything I could have done differently. Maybe the signs were always there, and I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe some things are inevitable, no matter how hard you try to stop them. All I know is that I'll never forget the look in her eyes when she told me she couldn't marry me. It was the moment I realized that love isn't always enough. And sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the worst.